Welcome back, everyone. All right, for the next topic, I'd like to talk a little bit about revenue. And one of my favorite quotes about revenue actually came from The Incredibles. Or The Incredibles 2, I should say. And in it, one of the characters says something so profound I had to take my phone out as I was watching it. But he said, it doesn't matter what you are selling. It only matters what people are buying. And this is super important for any farm business because one of the biggest challenges is building a company, building a farm, building an operation, planting your seeds, growing and harvesting, and then who are you selling to? And so if you think about these sales processes last, then you open yourself into a really challenging situation once you are operating and growing and ultimately burning money. And so as I look back at my economics education, of which I was an economics major, and I spent 4 years learning these topics, really the only thing that still sticks with me today from that learning is this simple equation, that revenue equals price times quantity. Basically, what that means is that how much money you make is equal to how many people you sell to, or how much you sell, times the price that you sell it for. It's pretty simple. However, as we start to dive into this, it's actually much more complicated. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out how we can project our revenue out and how we can learn how much money our company is going to be able to make. And to do that, we're going to start with quantity. Price is a little bit of art and science, but quantity is exceptionally accessible right now. And the first thing that we're going to look at is, who is your customer? I love this image, and it's not mine once again. I have all of the links to all of these slides that are going to be available after the class. But basically, this slide says that no matter what you want to sell, you're going to have to pick this average size of the customer that you're selling to. However, the challenge is that the bigger the customer, the fewer of them there are in the market. And so as you're planning, as you're selling, as you're growing, and as you're building, it's exceptionally important to understand where on this demand curve you're going to want to play to. Because if you're building a business and you're trying to sell to the brontosauruses, it's a very different product than if you're selling to the fleas. But because you're selling to fleas, there's a lot more quantity of those folks that are in the marketplace. So while it's possible to get to this arbitrary goal of $100 million of sales a year, it's a different product. And so it's exceptionally important to start off and understand where in the marketplace we're going to play, right? And going back to those 4 market slides, is it going to be a CSA? Is it going to be farmers markets? Is it going to be chefs? Is it going to be grocery stores? Is it going to be CPG companies? Depending on who you choose to sell to will affect everything else throughout your business. And so as we look at who you're selling to, the next thing to figure out is, who are they? And you could do this at a high level thought, but really it's, who are they as people, right? What is their job title? If you're selling to a company, what's the role in that company of the people that would be your customer? And understanding these a bit more about the demographics and the social changes and what they care about is going to be really crucial to helping to build a better product. And the reason why you need to understand this is because what we're going to do is make sure that we're selling the right thing. And so in the first 2 slides, we were looking at our potential customers. And I had this problem where I thought I was selling a product. But realistically, you don't want to sell that fire flower, especially when you're talking about to an individual consumer or to a larger business. And so 2 examples are, if you're selling at a local farmer's market, your product speaks for itself, right? You're selling to your customer a high quality good, but oftentimes there might be 5 to 10 other vendors out there. What you're selling is the brand. You're selling the reason why your company is the one that they should choose, and it's actually more a Fireball Mario. Whether it's something as pretentious as saying at a dinner party, if they ever come back, that I got this hyper local source thing and I have a relationship with my farmer, that's valuable to people. At the other side, if you're selling to a grocery store, your produce is great, but your ability to keep that grocery store stocked with fresh produce every single week is really what they care about. And so understanding that while it's very easy and normal to try and sell the fire flower, ultimately we need to make sure that we're communicating Fireball Mario. And so now that we've defined who our customer is, we understand what they want a little bit, and we know what we're selling, the question is how do we sell it? And so unfortunately, this slide isn't really built for the future of farms. I use it in my more traditional startup entrepreneur class, but I find that it's probably still very valuable here in this context. And so really it's these different ways that you're able to create a financial interaction and transaction with your customer, right? You could sell it directly to them in a farmer's market. You could do a subscription box where you're a local CSA and you're delivering to customers every single month. And that recurring revenue really does add value. There's all sorts of other things that are possible, and this is just a sample of few of them. But making sure that you understand how you sell to them is going to really inform everything else about your marketing, your business, and exactly what you're selling. All right, so we looked at our customers, we looked at their demographics, we looked at our product, we looked at our revenue model. The next thing that oftentimes we're going to want to know is how big this opportunity is, right? How do we understand how big this company, this farm can be so that we can better project it or better communicate it or even better pitch it as a farm business to an investor? And so the first way that is often used is this top-down approach. And I started to introduce that in our last module. If the tomato market is $4 billion a year in the United States, and we can get, 70% of that is accessible within a 12-hour drive or a 24-hour drive of the Midwest. Now we can reach that SAM. And then we think that we could capture a percentage of that. And that's our TAM, SAM, and SOM. A lot of folks like that. Frankly, I don't like that one at all. While it's important, I actually prefer a bottoms-up approach. Because to me, it's really easy to say we're going to get 10% of a market. But it's much, much harder to even get one transaction. And so when I work with customers, I always like to say, how do you get one sale? How do you sell one head of lettuce, one tomato, one fish, whatever, to one customer? And how do we start there? And once we understand how you get one, how do you figure out how many transactions you can get in a week? And then how many you'll get in a month? From there, we can learn how do we improve? How do we scale? And then we'll get a better idea of what our annual revenue is. And once we understand what the annual revenue is, it should be kind of similar to what our TAM, SAM, and SOM is. But if we start with the top down and we ignore the bottom up, we might miss all of the actual nuance that it takes to build a business. Whereas if we start at the bottom up and we miss the top down, we might miss the entire economic opportunity. And so this is how I want to think about revenue. And in the next topic, we're going to go through a really simple and really cool example that we can start to understand these bottoms-up transactions such that we can calculate and project out what that revenue might be. Stay tuned.